also. 6:02. It is
6:02.
6:02, okay. All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:02 PM, our special business meeting. All rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do we have any public input?
I do not have any public input to report right now.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming here on an odd night.
And let me add my thanks as well. It's really helpful on a couple of issues, so.
All right. We have some new business. The first one is investments in treasury notes. And I'm thinking that Tim or you, Mike, might be able to tell us about that.
Yeah, I can. So we at I don't know. Tim, was it in December at our December meeting that we took that vote, or was it?
Well, the first vote was, I believe, November, and we didn't make it happen in December. And when we were trying to make it happen, LPL suggested this option would be a more prudent and auditable direction versus wrapping the funds in with our other CDs. To do them in treasury bills would be cleaner. The second option would have been to open a new account with new CDs, and that would have been just as time consuming and complicated to get the board members on that new account and so on and so forth.
So yeah, so just to sum up very quickly, we took a vote, and it was there were several accounts that had just basically reserve funds, just funds that were not for immediate use, not needed for immediate use, that had just been sitting in accounts that were bearing or earning either no interest or extremely low interest. And so we took a vote to invest those the same way we had been investing most of the tax funds that come in every year to put them with Capcom and have them invest them. In the past, we had in previous years, we had language that said it could be in either CDs or treasury notes, and both of which are acceptable investments that we're allowed to invest in. This year, for whatever reason, I think it was based on what the current recommendations, the current interest rates. I think our resolution specifically said to put them in CDs, but we were advised that it would just, if we're trying to keep these funds segregated and separate and keep them clear, and given current rates and everything, that it would make more sense to put these in treasury bills just to keep them distinct and separate. But that doesn't, I guess that's not consistent with what we actually voted on in the resolution. So I guess the suggestion is just to modify that to allow it to be invested in either CDs or treasury bills, just to give that flexibility. And again, that's something we have done in the past. At some of our previous resolutions had given that option, just depending on what made more sense based on current interest rates and things like that.
So the motion would be to modify the prior vote to allow investment in treasury notes?
Yes.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion? Okay. Is there a second? Is there any more discussion?
Who made this suggestion?
So Tim can speak to that.
LPL, the Capcom, the investment broker.
Jim Brandon.
When we went back to them and said, okay, go buy us some CDs now, he's like, well, my recommendation would be if you want them separate, my recommendation is to keep them separate. And I'll also say it's not so much my recommendation as law to keep these funds separate. But then I went back to the language, couldn't actually execute given the language of the resolution.
Okay, so the alternative would be to open up a separate account and add CDs, or to keep the current account and add treasuries to our resolution.
That's exactly
So
right.
our resolution would say CDs and or treasuries.
Correct.
I'll second that. Oh, she already did, I'm sorry.
We're just having
I'm sorry.
discussion. Is there any further discussion?
And, well, just, do we know, is there any appreciable difference in the interest rates that we would get with CDs versus treasuries right now?
They're comparable. They're in the 3.5% to 4.5%.
All right, all in favor of the motion to amend our prior vote to allow investments in treasury notes, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay.
It's 6:08. And I'll just add thanks, and that Tim will be able to help us get it done before his last day on the 17th. So.
Okay, the next, I believe, is not issuing yet an RFP, but thinking about authorizing issuance of an RFP for legal services. Maybe you can speak to that,
I'll
Tim.
speak to that. So we have had the same counsel for all 9 years that I've been here, and I believe for a significant number of years before that, although I don't know. And I'm told that it's a best practice to issue the RFP every 5 to 10 years. The positives are that it would be a best practice and we'd see what else is available. We've thought of this several times in my 9 years, or the board has thought of it several times in my 9 years, and usually wants to do it right after CSEA contract negotiations, which we did just complete, thankfully, and thanks to Marina and committee. The negative of doing so that I'm aware of is that they have not raised their retainer price in the whole 9 years that I've been here. And so we theoretically could end up paying more by selecting a different firm, or paying more because Gerben and Ferlazzo might see it as their opportunity to raise their rates. Although, frankly, it's, I presume, a competitive market like everything else. So maybe we wouldn't face that. In our finance committee meeting Monday night, I believe it was, we decided to take the budget, and I believe it was 15,000, and we raised it to 22.5 just in case. Is that correct? No. Okay. So what was it?
Well, it's budgeted at 20
Mhm.
when a 5-year average of 17,500, 5-year average. We budgeted 20. So at the end of that conversation was like, well, we have a cushion if we go out to bid and it comes in higher. That's what
I thought we also added 5,000.
we talked about raising 5,000, but then I think we landed on the fact that we were already over 5-year average.
That's right. Yeah. And also that if the board chose to go in a different direction, it's relatively easy because of the existence of the capital fund to, overspend a line by 5% or something, and you can correct it later.
So the motion then would be to issue the RFP for legal services, or authorize issuance of an RFP.
We don't have a written one yet, but I presume we can get one from another library that's issued one. And this sounds respectful, but we have a lot of lawyers on the board, so maybe once we find an RFP, we could get some of our lawyers to scan it real quick and make sure it was an optimum document. And also might need to lean on you guys for expertise on what sort of a process, like do you entertain sales pitches, and how long do you leave this open? Typically, we choose our legal counsel by board action every July 1st, which is the annual meeting. So I would think if we did it, we'd want to complete it by June anyway, so that we could have a motion. And I don't relish the idea of being temporarily without legal counsel, or feeling like you wanted to go to another lawyer, but we had to renew on July 1st because of timing, or at our July meeting because of timing. So I might need to ask questions about how this is done, since I've never done it. But there's plenty of resources both on the board and in the library community. Tim Burke would be a resource, I'm sure. Can't say that our law firm would be a resource, but anyway, so they may not want to advise us on how to write the RFP. somebody will.
Okay.
And I'm not insisting, I'm just bringing it up because it's really been on various people's agenda for the last 5 or 6 years, but it never gets done.
All right, then do I have a motion to authorize issuing an RFP for legal services?
I'll move.
Corey? And
You seconded, Maria?
Joanne.
Oh, Joanne, thanks.
okay, and is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none.
I did see a board member who didn't raise their hand. Is that an abstention or?
No, I raised my hand.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thanks. And the time is 6:13.
All right, the next one. Just looking at- I know that Jenna found the previous board vote on term length for the Board of Trustees, and just looking for it, and I couldn't find it right away, but I know there was a vote by a prior version of the board. I mean, we have some members still here, but some, many are new. And what the prior board did by a majority of 6 voted to reduce the term of office from 5 years to 3. And I was asked to contact Tim Burke about it, which I did. And then I recently realized I hadn't heard from him, and I followed up, and he said that that we could change our bylaws ourselves to have 3-year terms, or we could take a revote and see if we actually want to have 3-year terms. And of course, as you know, an 11-member board, it's not as neat and tidy as it is on like the school board, which has 9 members. So that means 3 seats are open every year. And this being an 11-member board, sometimes it would be 4 seats. So it wouldn't be like a neat cycle of 3 and 3 and 3. So I think when the last vote was taken, there was also a vote potentially to reduce the board to 9 members. And interestingly, that vote didn't pass, and the vote to reduce the term did pass. So it seemed a little bit like it would have made more sense if we had 9 members to have 3-year terms, but we don't. So
Can I ask, just a question, because I'm a little bit confused because I recall, and I haven't had time to go back and rewatch the meeting from last year when we discussed this, but my recollection was that we were told that we could not change the term length without going to the state Board of Ed, that we could change the number of members because the 11 members versus 9 members was just a matter of our bylaws, but the length of the term is something that had to be approved. And we were told it was just a matter of paperwork, and it could be moved through state ed relatively, it would take a few months or whatever. We have to get it on their agenda, and then they would just rubber stamp it and it would come through, but it wasn't something we could do on our own. Now, that was what we were told at the time.
I know,
So-
the last time I contacted Tim Burke, I was told something different. So,
Yeah.
I can't explain that. And I know what you're saying. I remember it being a process, which is why I contacted Tim Burke about it. And I don't think, I'm not sure what happened with that, but I did follow up, and then I got a different answer about
Right.
changing our own bylaws. So, I find it, yes, it's confusing. So I think maybe we should be more clear what you want to do. If we want to change, keep the 3 years that the prior board voted to do, or if we wanted to vote to say should stay at 5 years. I think at this point, if the vote is for 3 years continuing, then, I'd have to figure that out with Tim Burke and find out exactly what he was saying, because he said, well, you didn't change your bylaws. And, it still says 5 years in your bylaws that are online. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't know we could just change our bylaws. So if that's true, then we could change them. We could vote to change them, or we could just vote to have them remain the same at 5 years. So I don't know what the feeling is on that, or if we want to do a motion to change it. Do we want to do a motion to change it back to have 5 years as opposed to 3? I'm not, I know I didn't vote for it, but that's just here nor there. The majority did vote for it, so, but that was, let's see. I know Jenna looked it up, what the date of the meeting was. It was a while ago.
It was either December, January, because I missed that meeting. I
Okay.
remember reading the minutes, but I did not attend that meeting.
Well, Kathy took over as president in, I believe, November of 2020, right, Kathy?
It would have been,
And it was right about the time you took over.
it wasn't 2020 because it was, I think it was 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 May I make a brief comment?
Sure.
So the board at the time, the dominant idea among the 6 who voted for it was that 3 years might entice more people to run because the commitment would seem a little less substantial. And then I can't remember, but other balancing points were made to that. I don't remember what they were, but I believe that was the reason the motion passed. And that's all I remember, except that I think Mike's and Kathy's recollections are spot on. So
I can add a little more context. This is just based on my memory, because as Kathy mentioned, there were 2 separate issues that were brought up. One was the idea of reducing our board from 11 members down to 9, and part of the concern was, well, I don't want to characterize, but there was an idea that the board would function better with fewer people, that 9 people would be better rather than having 11. So that kind of was a primary thing that had been brought up. And there were, people on both sides of that. But one concern that was raised with that was if we reduced the board from 11 to 9 and we still had the 5-year terms, that would mean, we'd only have some years, only one single board member on a 9-member board coming up for election, which seemed, not to give very much, ability of the voters of of Guilderland to kind of have any effect on the board, if it were like that. So the suggestion was made, well, maybe we could simultaneously change it to 3-year terms, go from 11 to 9, go to 3-year terms. Then we'd have 3 people coming up every year, and we'd have a smaller commitment and that kind of thing. And then, I can't speak for anyone else's position, but I believe my position, and then we were told, as I was mentioning before, that change, the change from 5 years to 3 years, was not one we could make on our own. That had to go through state ed. And I don't speak for anyone else, but I believe my position at the time was I didn't want to vote to approve the change from 11 to 9 until after we had secured the change that had to go through state ed to go from 5 years to 3 years, because I didn't want to leave us in the position of only having elections every 5 years with a 9-member board. So the idea was it should be sequenced, at least in my opinion, was that we should change from 5 to 3 first, and then once we got that secured and the state ed had approved that and we could go to 3, then we could take the vote to go down to 9 if that's what people wanted to do. But not to do that prematurely before we had done the paperwork and got the approval and all that. There were different opinions and not everybody was on the same page on all these things, but that was some of the discussion that was happening at the time. My only thing right now is because I'm very certain, and again, I haven't gone back to the video, but I'm happy to go back and look, but I'm very certain we were told at the time that the change in the length of the term had to go through state ed. And so if we're being told something different now, I feel like we really need to straighten that out before we're, I mean, we need to know what's the process, because, you know, whether this is something we can just do and it's effective, or we have to get approvals that may take some time. And depending on how long that takes, you know, will that be effective by the next election cycle, or it's going to be further ahead? You know, I think we need to get the procedure square before we can decide what we're doing.
So you probably need to table it to the February meeting,
I agree with that.
regular meeting, I guess, and maybe.
And I will,
When I read
I'll
that, it was
have a
lengthy
conversation with
process,
Tim
not a
Burke
short
about it,
process.
just because.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I remember reading the minutes.
I don't recall.
But these
There
two
was-
should be considered together.
Yeah, there was some discussion, I think, from Tim Burke about how long it would take roughly, but I can't remember off the top of my head what that time period was. I do remember him saying that it was basically a formality and it would just go right through, but I don't remember how, you know, is it more like 3 or 4 months, or more like, you know, closer to a year or whatever? I just don't remember.
So I do have a strong recollection there. I believe he said approximately 6 months, because it's technically not stated at the Board of Regents.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's
which
what I
meets
remember
apparently
reading.
3 times a year, and then it takes, they need to talk about it once to put it on their agenda for their next meeting. But then when they do put it on the agenda, Tim Burke suggested to us that it was a rubber stamp, as my
Okay.
Yeah. Bylaws you
Thank
can
you.
always
Yeah, that's-
change in terms of the number of board members. That's a simple bylaw change, you know, with, I think, 2/3 majority, when you want to change a bylaw. Term of service is a different issue. So I think we should get the information regarding what exactly has to be done if we want to entertain changing the length of time. Because I see these two things as related. And if I might, we had a different board. There were different issues that were floating around with a different board. This board is, how do I put this? A different board.
And not to, I don't, you know, to characterize too much, but I think 2 of the members of the board that were most strongly in favor of the reduction from 11 to 9 happen to be members that are not here tonight, that are still on the board. So I don't want to speak for other people, but we're not hearing those voices.
I don't think we can vote on it tonight anyway,
Yeah.
because it's a bylaws change, yeah.
All right.
So I would just say, I guess if we're gonna ask for clarification, if we get an email so we can reference it.
Yeah.
Easiest, or it'll be easier
Sure.
to pull up.
I'll
just
try
be
to
my recommendation.
talk to Tim Burke and then have it reduced to writing, whatever it is.
Or even like, per our phone conversation, this is correct, and then, yeah, no, okay.
Or
All right.
please
That way
email
it's,
the-
that
please
that way
email
it's
the
on
rules.
him, yeah, that way it's on him if we're voting.
All right, we'll table that for our other meeting, and I will have that conversation before then, and then we'll know exactly what's going on. In terms of whether it's 3 or 5, we'll just know what the process is for changing, if we want to change to 3. Okay, table that. And now this is we're on the approval of closing the library at 5 p.m. on Friday, February 10th, 2023 for a staff holiday party. It seems self-explanatory.
I make a motion, we approve it.
Marcia?
Second. Do it.
Mhm.
Do it.
Okay,
This was originally the only thing that we had to talk about.
I know. Is there any discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raise your
Aye.
hand. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
Thank you, and the time is 6:26.
6:26. All right. And I just have one more on this agenda, and I know we were having some discussions about this because I wasn't sure, like an annual dinner. I've never gone to this dinner, so
Yep.
it's hard to say it's annual, but I know we've had COVID for 3 years.
Right.
So obviously we're not having that big,
I was offended, I was never invited to this.
First
So it's,
inaugural annual,
yeah,
Former-
annual is a bit of a misnomer, I think. Well, I mean, obviously.
quarterly.
Yeah.
So it's a thing that used to be a kind of a nice morale building thing for board members and administration of the library. It was a dinner that we would have in one of the restaurants. For example, if people remember Dorados, which was where Orchard Tavern West is now, they have a side room. And so we'd get our own room, and board members generally would bring their spouses, and then administrators as well would generally bring their spouses. And it was a social occasion. No business is transacted. It's not a, like, it wouldn't be good with open meetings law to do any business, right? So it's just a theoretical opportunity to socialize, get to know each other better. And I think, even though I think this current board is operating really, really well in reference to the previous discussion, I think it's an opportunity for people to kind of, I don't know, if you know somebody's spouse, you know them differently than if you just sit in a board meeting with them, that sort of thing. So I'm in favor of doing it. The funding on it, if I remember correctly, was done in the following way. The board development budget line paid for the 11 tickets of the board members. They're, if they're married, for example, or if they're bringing a +1, they would pay their own way for the +1. And the same was true with staff development money for the director, assistant director, people like Luann, Tim, David, et cetera, would all be invited. On the admin side, we had a lot of people who, we'd get 2 or 3 admins rather than 7 or 8, just because if it's your job, some people are sort of like, that seems a little bit like work to me, So anyway, I would certainly, if we do it, invite all the people in admin in the room to be part of it, but there's no pressure to be part of it by any means, to either the board or the staff. So it's just up to you if you want to revive that tradition, or, and I hadn't thought about this before this very moment, change that tradition in any way to do something different that accomplishes the same thing. So.
I'm for it. I don't know. Sounds good to me.
Sure.
And Barbara was working on it a little bit. At one point, we had a board meeting discussion of this maybe 4 months ago. So I remember when Barbara was just heading off for her winter time in the South, that she texted me a menu from some restaurant where she and her husband were eating, and said this would be a good one to consider. I can't remember what restaurant it was, but so at least if you want any context, Barbara would remember it. So.
So is it something that we would be interested in, or like maybe a doodle poll for potential dates? Because I don't know, I don't know what time frame were you thinking? Because we're February next week, and then there's a break,
Yeah.
right? The school break, which is probably not a good time to have
Yeah.
things. And then you're into March, I guess.
How about after the February board meeting, which is the 16th, but maybe between that and the 28th of February? Does that make sense?
Well, that's that.
Oh, that's the break week.
That
Sorry.
encompasses
Yeah.
President's Day week.
Yeah.
I think is a break.
And some people will travel during that time, yeah. So.
So the end of February probably wouldn't work, but I mean,
End
for
of
a
March.
lot of people.
End of March.
End of March or beginning of March, whichever.
Well-
I'm open to anything, including, sorry to say it, but nothing. It's, I think it's a good thing, but I'm not like gonna live and die over whether we do this. So.
I think it's a good thing. Why would it be a bad thing?
Right.
Because I have to hang out with you
I am happy to take the lead and send out a doodle poll to find out what
Yeah,
folks'
cool.
availability is.
Thanks.
And I can ask Barbara what the restaurant list. You're gonna get it from my work email.
That's okay.
All right, were there any other items for the agenda?
I have one thing I'd like to briefly, I'm not even sure if everyone is aware, because as I was looking back, I think it was like email went to everyone, but following last month's board meeting, our board treasurer, George Wilhelm, resigned from the position, so we do not currently have a treasurer. So I think we need to post that again and try and get the word out so that we can find
Do you know
someone new.
why?
You know, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he had some feeling that some of his concerns weren't being taken seriously, or that he was kind of butting heads too much and not kind of,
Butting heads with whom?
I don't, again, I don't know.
It's a limited universe here.
I think he just was frustrated overall. I think did he send a letter, right? So I don't know if should that be circulated to the whole board probably, or?
I didn't even know he was a.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I lost track of who got that email. I thought it went to the board, but
It didn't.
okay.
So, yeah,
I'm just so lost. How many meetings have I missed? Have I missed any meetings? I feel like I'm like in a void here. I know I was on vacation, but I don't think I missed
No,
a meeting.
he was here.
right?
he was here at the last meeting. It was after
And then
that.
January got snowed out, so
Yeah.
that's the weird
It
feeling.
was after the December meeting that he announced he was resigning.
You officially sent a letter resigning?
Yes. So.
To whom?
Okay.
I think it was to Kathy,
It was-
me and you, wasn't it?
Oh, was it only
I don't
us?
know who was on the email. The letter was addressed to Kathy, but I was on the email, so.
So are we advertising again? Should we make a motion? Do we need a motion?
And we should revisit what the process was. I believe you had either the nominating committee or the finance committee get resumes and do some interviews.
It wasn't the nominating committee.
Do you remember, Mike?
I know
Personnel?
that the finance committee did like a little interview with
Wasn't that it?
it. I know we put out, the library put out, a note posting of it. And, and this was it was less than a year ago, so we should have the job
Yeah.
listing, that should be fine, and we shouldn't have to update that or do anything with
I
it.
think it was the finance committee. I remember being on that
Yeah.
before it changed.
So
So
at some point, the finance committee had a call once we got, I think I was listed, my library email address was listed as the contact point, and I had received the inquiry from George Wilhelm, and then I think maybe I had a call with him to gauge his interest, and then contacted the rest of the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
what.
we had-
or something like
sounds
that.
right, yeah.
But yeah, I'm
should
happy
we
to do
give
it.
a
however we
deadline by
wanna do it.
which people should submit their resumes?
So there's an interesting wrinkle here in that we'll also be looking for a fiscal officer. So, and I'm just gonna say this without knowing if it makes any sense, but if we're looking for a fiscal officer at the same time that we're looking for a treasurer, and one is a paid and one is traditionally unpaid, certainly some people might apply for both. I'm just wondering if there's any significant confusion that would result from that. And then the positive flip side of that is someone who interviews but isn't necessarily selected to be the fiscal officer. Treasurer could be a fallback position. There are a number of people that are like you, board members, in the sense that they want to be involved and contribute to the library in some way. So I don't know. I just throw those out as variables. I'm fine putting them both out at once.
Yeah.
We can handle complexity. So
I'm not sure about the candidate who doesn't, get selected. That's a little bit of a weird situation.
Yeah.
Well,
We're not paying you,
we're
but
not
would you
willing to
volunteer?
hire you, but you can come and work for free. So I don't know, but yeah.
you all chose to come to work. But you're right.
Not after applying for.
Yeah.
Not after
So we
being
only meet
rejected.
once a month.
If you'd like to give me a blurb, I can put it in the.
Oh, we have it in our email and whatnot, so I'll find it.
Oh, okay.
Would he be willing to stay on until we find someone new? I just thought I'd
don't-
ask.
I don't think so, no. No, I think he was, I think, ready to be done, so.
How long was that?
What?
How long was that?
It was the night after the December
No,
board
but
meeting.
how long
How long
was he
was he
in
with
Oh,
us?
I think about 4,
August.
yeah,
Months.
August,
Just a
September,
couple
October,
months.
November, December, 5 months, so.
Is it important for us to all see the letter to see what's going on?
I think that's,
This has been suggested.
yeah.
I didn't get it the first time.
I forward the,
Yeah, I mean, if there's an undercurrent that we're not aware of, I think we should be aware of what we're working with, you know? If there's a problem, I'd like to know about it.
I'm happy to forward it to
Because
the
it'll just
whole
happen
board,
again.
just so everybody can, everybody's on the same page. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm sure this was probably discussed the last time, that the treasurer does not have to be a resident of Guilderland, correct?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay,
And I would just add that if any of you knows potential candidates for either treasurer or fiscal officer, that's often a fruitful path, you know.
Okay, was there anything else that needed to be discussed? Any public input?
Nope.
Can I just say a couple quick things, Kathy?
Sure.
So one is that, and Luann, you can correct me if you'd like, but I believe we're in the nomination period for the Best of the Capital Region Awards. So we'd love for you to go to the Times Union website. And
Barbara Frederico or Barbara Frederico?
that's the story of my life, by the way. But anyway,
Is someone on the meeting, by the way, that we haven't like been paying attention to? It says 3.
I think that's just 3 people watching.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, just making sure.
Um,
Making sure. I didn't know she was calling.
so I lost my train of thought. Oh, so Luann, when does the nomination period end?
Nomination period ends Friday, the 3rd.
Okay, so it's, and then we're gonna come back to you and ask you to vote again once we get nominated. And the other is that today is the last day, if you're interested, to log the reading hours and or titles that you did in January on the Beanstack app, which is free on the Apple Store and whatever they call it on Android. And frankly, this might not be a great way to say it, we've already exceeded the goal we set, but we are trying to place high in the national community of libraries, and the higher we place, the more chance we have of getting a little bit of money and prizes, you know. It's like selling seed packets when we were a kid or whatever. So, but if you wish to do that, it is also a great way to keep track of what you've read, what you have read. So thank you for those couple of minutes. So are we still streaming? Okay, I won't say this thing.
All right, if there's no other business?
Is this Mr. Riley's last meeting?
It is.
I will be at the.
Oh, I'm sorry,
February
that's right.
16th.
Yeah.
So I'll reserve my
Thursday the
comments.
I will be at that.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
second? Second. By Irene. All in favor of adjournment? Please say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 6:41.
Okay, so Barbara apparently thought we